So I'm going to be introducing everybody. I'm just going to start from this side of the stage and go work my way that way. We have,
Thank you. Thank you.
right here we have Mr. Keegan Brewster here on the end. He served 13 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He was released in 2014. And since then, he's established his own successful trucking company and has authored a book entitled From the Backyard to the Streets. And we're so grateful that you're here today, Mr. Brewster. Next, we have Vanessa Laus-Steinkamp. She teaches government here on our campus and in dual credit classrooms. Earlier this year, Governor Abbott appointed her to serve on the Academic Credit Industry Recognition Task Force. And that task force has been charged to identify mechanisms that will reduce the recidivism rate by evaluating job skills, opportunities, and educational and academic opportunities in our prisons across the state. So that is the lady right there in the middle. It is my pleasure to introduce Evie Litwalk, who's been speaking all morning and sharing all kinds of wonderful information. And I just want to stress truly that hers is a story of resilience and advocacy, and she talks the talk, but more importantly, she really walks the walk, because she's a shining example to us all that it's not enough just to formulate opinions and recognize wrongs, but we also need to take it upon ourselves to look out for each other, okay? She's founded the Witness of Mass Incarceration, which is a storytelling archival project designed to document the experience of the formerly incarcerated women and LGBTQ people. And the goal of Witness to Mass Incarceration is to just reduce the number of incarcerated people in our country overall. They meet regularly with the Federal Bureau of Prisons as a result. And she travels across the country just like she's done today, so graciously, tirelessly to advocate and speak to groups regarding these issues. Abby herself was formerly incarcerated in 2 federal prisons, and that's where her role as an advocate began while she was there. When she left prison, she was homeless and penniless, but she didn't let that get her down, and her work, dedication, and advocacy continued. In addition to Witness to Mass Incarceration, her current initiative is the Suitcase Project, and she is reaching out to college students just as many of you in this room, and other organizations. And the plan is to provide fully stocked suitcases for newly released women and LGBTQ people who far often, just as Evie experienced, leave homeless and penniless. So then we have Dr. Ryan Parnell. I have to get out my iPhone. Okay. So Dr. Ryan Parnell teaches here. He teaches psychology, and he's taught abnormal psychology, research, human growth and development, human sexuality, counseling theory, personality theory, and others. He also holds mental health licenses in Texas, including as a licensed psychologist and a licensed professional counselor supervisor. He has evaluated and counseled paroled offenders in community and incarcerated settings since '95. And in fact, his doctoral thesis focused primarily upon counseling theories which assist the rehabilitation process of the offender. So that is Dr. Ryan. Then at the end, certainly not least, we have Cheryl North. Cheryl North is in our sociology department, and she also teaches criminology. She began working in the field of criminal justice in 1988, and she's held positions as a probation officer and as an investigator before she came to work in the state capitol. There she worked for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a liaison to the state legislature, as the director of Interstate Compacts, and eventually the director of the Criminal Justice Program for the state. She served in this capacity until coming to teach at TCC in 2006. So I'm very, very excited about this group of people we have assembled on this panel. And what we're going to do is we're really going to truly have this be a discussion. So I'm just going to start out with a question for all of them that they're going to answer. And here's my question, good people. And thank you so much, all of you, for being here today and giving us your time. Yes, let's do that. Thank you. My question is this. you all have these different areas of expertise and knowledge, okay? So given that, and given this wonderful group of people, students, what is the one thing that if they hear nothing else, you would want them to take away from this session? The one important thing you would like them to remember. And we're gonna start with Evie, and then we're gonna go to Mr. Brewster and work our way down. And we'll hopefully start a serious conversation, and thank you.
Now, she didn't tell us this question, so we're really have to think of it. The one thing I would like you to walk away with is that while there are 2.3 million people in prison, roughly a quarter of those people, over 500,000, have not been convicted of a crime. They're there because they couldn't afford bail of under $3,000. So in effect, we've criminalized 500,000 poor people. And one big mission would be to end cash bail across the United States, and for judges to be ordered that people will show up and to stop putting people back in prison because they don't have the money.
Thank you. Mr. Brewster?
The one thing that I believe that I won't even want to take away from this panel would be that transformation and change is real, despite whatever your circumstances may be, or despite having to be up against the penal system, or despite the rules and regulations that may not necessarily fall in your favor due to your demographic or due to your race or ethnic or however, whatever it is that's before you. I just want to, if there was one thing that I want everybody to take away, it would be that change is real and very possible.
Thank you so much. Ms. Steinkamp?
Well, before I sat on the task force, education was really my purview. So I didn't have a lot of interaction with incarcerated and offenders. So one of the pieces in education we always focus on is success for every student, and turning that and translating that into the prison system, success for every offender, and how complex that pie is. And there's so many different pieces. We tend to want to homogenize and make complex issues simple, and you just can't do that with the offender and the incarceration system that we have.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ryan?
What I've seen through the years from my work is, and just from my own degrees and speaking to other people, there's a distinct difference between punishment and rehabilitation. And it seems like if there's a strong philosophy of punishment, then there's a very little emphasis on rehabilitation. And it seems like punishment philosophy seems to be pervasive. In the work I've done, I've worked hard, like Mr. Brewster said, about change, which is very important. And as a therapist and a counselor, I work with folks in such a way, hoping for that change. But I would all constantly be running into, they're not going to change. They're going to not improve. And it seems like the harder I work, the more there's an emphasis on maybe you're being codependent with these individuals instead of understanding the importance of rehabilitation.
Thank you so much. And Ms. North?
I think the big thing I would want for you guys to take away is that it's time to kind of look at a paradigm shift in our society of how we think about criminal justice and how we think about changing issues that are problems. We have a lot of problems in our society, but we don't have to handle them all within the criminal justice system. We tend to be, our society tends to be really fascinated with crime. We like true crime, we watch all the cop shows. And we're a little bit, we have this kind of paradigm of being proud of ourselves and being tough on crime. You know, we kind of talk about, oh, we're not going to get away with this in our community. But to piggyback a little bit on what Evie said, she talked about criminalizing poverty, which we do. Have you ever thought about how that makes no sense? You're too poor to pay a fine, so they lock you up, which then costs the taxpayers more money. And so we have 2.3 million people incarcerated in this country on any given day. Correctly, a chunk of those have not even been convicted of anything, and it costs, on average, about $30,000 a year to hold someone in an incarcerated setting. So if you look at all the things that we criminalize, poverty, drug addiction, mental health issues, could we handle those in another system outside of the criminal justice system? And if we have $30,000 a person per year, think how much good work we could do on the front end, and it would keep people from having that stigma of being incarcerated. It would keep people from being incarcerated in a setting where then they get out and they really haven't gotten any help for their problems. It's gotten worse instead of better. Now they can't get a job, now they don't have money. So I just think the way to do that is we need a massive paradigm shift about how we think of issues that are facing our society and what's the right institution to handle those issues in.
Okay, so now leaning on each other and knowing what we just have learned about each of you and your report factors, now y'all just have a discussion and tell us, based on your personal experiences, because you've all come from different walks, share personal experiences, tell us what you think needs to be done when we're looking at this mass incarceration problem. Just share your expertise and your knowledge, each of you, whichever approach you want to take.
I would like to blow up all the prisons. I'd like to push the button, see them go down. Outside of that, being more reasonable, you know, when you criminalize people, you destroy their life. Prison is a life sentence. I will never be normal again. As I say to many people, I look normal, but I'm physically, emotionally, and mentally damaged from the prison experience. And no matter what you provide in prevention, you can't take away the one thing that we lost, which is ourselves and our dignity. We have to rebuild ourselves, which we do. We walk out trying, but we have to stop this, not tweak it. We have to, the paradigm shift is the right idea. We have to look at prison as the last resort, not the first resort. There, in at least 14 states, 6-year-olds are being arrested by police because educators don't want to deal with the problem. We have to start in preschool and educate people and deal with people's mental health so we redefine things. Prison is a trauma. Even if you're successful, you have issues the rest of your life. And we shouldn't be doing that. And there's 70 million people that have been convicted of crime. Many are misdemeanors, but 70 million people in America have been convicted of crime. That means tens of millions have gone through our system. It has to stop. And believe me, it will stop with me and with all of you, but we can do it.
But let me first say this. I was incarcerated for over 13 years. While I was incarcerated, my mother died from a drug overdose. My 16-year-old brother was shot in the head twice, and my youngest brother was sent to prison. So I'm well aware of the effects that prison have upon a person. So with that being said, I stand on the standpoint that a lot of times I feel individuals use a victim mindset, meaning that it's going to be injustice for the rest of our lives. It was here before me, it's going to continue to be here after me. So with me, my thing is, what do I need to be doing as an individual to better myself? So when I went to prison, my thing was, I'm taking advantage of any opportunity that was placed before me. I received a GED, I received 2 trades, I've read over thousands of books. I use that opportunity as a way to self-educate myself. The numbers will show that the recidivism rate is high, but it's high because you have individuals that's coming home from prison and they going right back to the same community, right back to the same environment, dealing with the same individuals that they was once dealing with. Those things play a big factor. So once an individual is released back into society, there do need to be certain programs implemented to help them as far as job situations, because you're a convicted felon, it's going to be hard to get a job. That's just the facts of it. But I believe that when an individual makes up in their mind that, hey, it is what it is. True indeed, we need to fight as much as we possibly can to get things changed, but we can't change the reality of what's going on in today's time. The only thing that I can control is what's going on with Keith and Brewster. So I chose to take the time that I was incarcerated to better myself. I know millions upon millions of individuals that sit in prison, and they'll say all day that they ain't did this, they ain't did that, we ain't got this, we ain't got that. We gotta keep in mind that you went to prison for committing a crime, so you're not going down there to be at a hotel retreat. You got to keep that in mind, so it's a form of punishment, but while you're down there, you wanna be getting rehabilitated. So by them having different educational programs, that's on you. Once they place the different programs in there, you the one who have to make the decision to sign up to either go or don't go. So many times I know so many people that play the victim role that it's because of A, B, C, D why they can't do something, and I'm here to show you that I just done X amount of years. My mama did, my brother did. I come from the gang banging, the robbing, the killing. I come from that. Yet here I stand today as a successful business owner. I travel the world. I have a beautiful wife, a beautiful family. Those are just decisions that you have to make within yourself. So that's just my standpoint on it.
To piggyback on that, I think it's interesting talking about the opportunities that are available for, kind of building things back up. Our punitive level things is not the only way to go. In fact, we're, kind of tongue-in-cheek known as the world's biggest jailer. We incarcerate more people than any other country on earth. And so, when we talk about this paradigm shift, and if there's certain groups that are incarcerated that don't need to be, that they could be in another setting, and we're therefore saving that money, we can put a lot of that money toward programs. So many places around the world look at, if you're incarcerated, that is the punishment, right? Being in prison is the punishment. You don't need to make it torture while you're in there to make sure it's punishment. Being incarcerated is the punishment. So could we use that time period then to build people back up? And there are programs offered, but there aren't near enough offered. We could be doing a whole lot more in those settings to be sure that when people come out, then they're prepared to be out. And, like Debbie's talking about, programs that help people get on their feet when they're released back into society, so that you slow down that recidivism rate. You guys know what recidivism rate is? What that means? It means people that are released and they come back in through the system, and it's really high. If you look across all crime categories, it's like 57% the first year out. If you go 5 years out, it's closer to 77% recidivism rate. And so clearly, even though we're doing a lot of this kind of criminal justice thing, we're not doing it well. And so we need to kind of really look at how we can better allocate that money, even just in a way that'll make the population safer, as well as rehabilitating people and giving people what they need to be, productive citizens.
Just off of what you said, one of the women who worked with me is Zahara Green, who you'll see in a film, was 16 when she ran away from home, lived with 16-year-olds, was arrested when she was 17 for stealing televisions, because that's how they got money for food. She came back out of prison a year later, determined not to go back into prison, but what happened is she was starving. She didn't know, she wasn't brought up to know how to get a job. She didn't even know how to look for a job. So ultimately, after she couldn't eat, there was no food stamps left, she went and stole a TV and ended up in prison for 3 years. A lot of people who are recidivating are hungry, or nobody's taught them. I had the privilege of an education, I had the privilege of having resources that most of the people in prison never had. So people don't know, you get dumped on the street. I don't care how positive your attitude is. If you don't have skills, which is something in prison, they do have some programs, the feds don't have hardly any, and I was in feds, but they don't teach you what you really need to learn, which has never been taught to you. They don't teach you how to get a job, how to look, how to do this, how to do that. So I go back to, we have to educate everybody, so everybody knows how to be resourceful, so she wouldn't have had to go to prison and deal with the harassment she dealt with for another 3 years.
Abby, you had mentioned this morning in a previous discussion about recidivism and infractions versus returning to criminal behavior. Would you like to speak to that for just a moment?
On the federal level, so I can only talk on the BOP level, there's an intentional need not to explain recidivism. is recidivism is you committed a crime, or recidivism is that under your parole or your probation, you violated, you used a cell phone that you weren't supposed to use, you went on a computer you're not supposed to go on, you didn't report that you were going to New Jersey to see your mother. So a lot of people recidivate because their parole and probation officers can make a choice, a devastating choice, of whether to put you back or not. It's incredibly subjective. So many of us feel that that recidivism rate is not due to a crime. The people who go out in the first 6 months and come back, that's probably poverty recidivism. But the people who go out and get a technical violation is just someone, I don't say being a prick, whatever. You know, someone who could make a decision. Anyway, so we need skills.
I have a question for you. I would like to know what reentry looked like for you. I know you have discussed your reentry this morning. Maybe you can share with it after.
I will say this, it's a lot of individuals that come home from prison and they're not as fortunate and as blessed as I was. And that's because they do come home and they're forced to have to go back to their community or to their environment. My situation was different. My first day released from prison, I walked into my own home. I was given a set of keys to my own vehicle, my own home, and having those resources and having that is a big part of my success. Because I was able to come home to the fact that I don't have to go to the hood or I don't have to not have. So I will say that those play monumental parts of my success, but I don't take away from the fact that I know several individuals who have done time in prison and have came home to those environments where they make a conscious decision that, man, I don't want to do this no more. I want to live like this. So that being said, me and you probably can't be cool no more. Before I came home from prison, me and you was my partner. I go to the store with you, we hang out, this, that, and other. But now that I came home from prison, I'm choosing to live a different life. So me and you can't be cool like that no more. Because I know you're not trying to go in this direction right here. I'm trying to find me a job, I'm trying to get me a car, I'm trying to do different things that need to be done to reintegrate myself into society. A lot of times, we have a lot of people that solely depends on the system. And to a certain extent, like she said, you gonna be the penal system, prison, you're gonna have an amount of trauma to you. She's very correct about that. I spent 5 years in lockup. And once you've been sitting in a cell by yourself looking at the walls begin to talk to you. So she's very correct, but that's where I tell people, when you come home, now it's about what you gonna do, and them conversations you used to have, you have to replay those same conversations with yourself now. So my re-entry was different, but I tell everybody that come home from prison, because as soon as they come home, I'm somebody that they gonna call. Hey bro, I just came home, man. Everybody saying you doing good and this, that. What I need to do? And the first thing I tell them is that, man, you need to get away from your old partners and you need to go find you a job. I was fired from my first job. After like 90 days, I worked at Coca-Cola. They found out I had been in prison. They let me go. Okay, what's the next situation? My thing is, you need to be prepared and know that it's gonna be some obstacles. It's gonna be some setbacks. It's gonna be some challenges. That's a part of life. Whether you went to prison or you didn't go to prison, you're gonna have to still face these things. I don't want to take away from the fact, because what she's saying is correct. When you reintegrate into society and you're a convicted felon, you up against a certain amount of things that other people that they're not up against this. So I don't want to take from that, but I don't want to add to it from a victim standpoint, because I know so many individuals that use that as a leverage or as a crutch for the reason why you need to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, yet you chose to get up at 8 o'clock and you got to work late, so they fired you. Yeah, if you don't get to work on time and you're not there every day like you need to be, you no longer will be here. I have a company, and my drivers, if you're not at your destination at a certain amount of time, or you're not conducting yourself and representing my company in a certain way, I don't need your employment. I need individuals that's gonna come and be productive. So it wouldn't matter if you had been to prison or you had not been to prison. So I don't wanna take away from what she's saying, but I want other individuals to know that it's just not a victim standpoint.
People don't have to go back to the communities, but you are sent home to where you caught your charge. So you can't choose. If you came from New York City, you can't say, I'm going to Florida. You have to go where they send you. And they send you to where the problem is. So that's ridiculous, because there's no chance. And there should be places built for reentry that take people for 6 months to a year. And weave them back into society. Give them skills. They're not digital, they don't have the digital literacy, they're overwhelmed by what has changed since they came. See, I would put people in a college setting for a year and give them courses and help direct where they're going, because that's a better way to spend the money than send someone back to a neighborhood that they're likely to not have any opportunity. Now, I have the experience of, I was in the federal system, and there was everybody I know wanted to achieve. And many of the people, I worked across the country with formerly incarcerated people. I haven't had the experience with a lot of people who want to fail. I don't know people who want to go back to prison. But I do think that the world lacks, we seem to have no exit strategy, whether we go to war or whether we put people in prison. In America, we do something first and then we think about it second. There's no exit strategy from prison. There's no exit strategy from war. So people come home with PTSD. We come home with PTSD. So if you're going to put us there, then we need a strategy on the other side.
Dr. Ryan, thank you so much, Eddie and Keaton. Can you please talk about your experience has been? Give us some insight as to what you do, and also could you speak to how you've seen systemic racism play out in those experiences?
Well, I've been disappointed through the years. I've seen some things with the juvenile justice system that I've been excited about in terms of rehabilitation and trying to allow people to improve and move forward instead of just putting them into the adult system. But my work with the adult system, even today, going to prison settings and the work I've done, I've been disappointed because it seems like there's more emphasis on clustering people instead of individualizing their treatment. And there are, folks that have many learning disabilities, and that's not even in consideration. They can't read because of that learning disability. And it just seems like, again, there's not an emphasis on, okay, this is the person, this is the individual. And maybe it's money, financial situation, I don't know. But I've watched many people with learning difficulties to continue to recidivate. And of course, that's an issue for all ethnicities, right? It's not just one or two. And so these individuals need the support. And again, they have halfway houses where they transition. And they call it, well, that's their opportunity. And the work I did there, I would walk into a cafeteria style building and there would be 60 people in there. And I had to give treatment to 60 people, and they called it group treatment. And I was just baffled, gave my best. I think a few people responded. But it was disappointing. And it just seems, well, that's the best we can do. That's all we can afford. So I would do things for free, just to maybe get some adjustments made. But seeing when I did that, once again, I was looked upon in a negative light instead of looking at someone who's trying to assist individuals.
Vanessa, just briefly, could you tell us what the task force, what y'all are really looking into in terms of educational opportunities in our state and for our incarcerated population?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think we are delving into the Wyndham School District, which is a school district that is just dedicated to offender populations and getting them their GED. And then we are also trying to give other educational opportunities, so maybe partnering with other community colleges to offer dual credit classes for those offenders who would like to do so. And we're also trying to intersect with on-the-job training skills. And that has been a big piece of the pie as well. So if they are working in various facets of the prison, how can you certify once they become, adept at those skills? And, it's vast. There's a lot of prisons. We've toured 3 or 4 of them. One of them specializes in Braille. Another one specializes in graphic arts. And so that's been a problem of how do you create these certifications. And that's kind of what we're charged with to do.
Thank you. Let's walk in, Mr. Brewster. I keep switching between first and last names, I'm sorry. Given the statistics, it's likely we have formerly incarcerated people in this room, students in this room. And so, how can students and employees and faculty be of support to those who have been formerly incarcerated? Without outing them or anything, just what can we do to better serve is the real question. And I open it up to you guys, but I would also like to hear the thoughts from everybody else as well.
The people who are in a position to employ, I would first and foremost say be willing to give them a chance. That's one of the biggest things right there coming out from prison. As she stated, no man or woman that's in prison wants to come home and go right back there. Nobody wants to come home and fail. So once they release, they need someone that's willing to take that chance on them or willing to give them that opportunity to try to do something for themselves. And then the next thing I would say is don't judge them. A lot of when you come home from prison, you've been in there for so long that it takes you time to reintegrate and adjust to society as far as the new fashion, the new slang, the computer. When I first came home from prison, I didn't even know how to work the internet. I was so lost and confused that I would be in certain settings, and versus me taking the initiative to try to do it on my own, I'd go call like, hey, I'm up here trying to do this on the computer, where I'm supposed to go in? Because you're embarrassed, you don't want to look. So if you're an individual that happens to encounter someone that's coming home from prison, give them an opportunity, don't judge them, and guide them in the right direction, steer them in a straight path.
So, I don't have this memorized, but I'll try. 41% of people in prison do not have GEDs. So you're dealing with people who need basic skills when they come in. I would have a peer group made of 2 formerly incarcerated people to do life coaching or peer-to-peer mentoring. I would have a physical location that people could go. Because you go where you're comfortable, and formerly incarcerated people will go with each other. So if there's a space that you can create, a little conference room, a little hangout, but to have 2 people hired to spend the day doing the coaching, because we need that confidence build-up. We may want badly to excel, but you spent years being told you're a piece of shit. So you need to hear from your own people and build up a level of confidence. The other thing I will say is, and I think you could do this on this campus. I think you could dedicate a couple of staff people and a physical location. And you need tutors. You need students to tutor people who are willing to be tutored in reading, writing. Digital literacy is the most important thing. Finance. People have never had a credit card, have never opened a bank account, some people. They've never had a driver's license. They don't know skills that everybody in this room knows without thinking. It's like you came from Mars and you're on planet Earth. You have to teach. So I would have a lot of tutors. I'd have 2 dedicated people. I'd have a physical location. And I also want to add a comment about these halfway houses. The halfway house is worse than prison. Because all they have you do is give you permission. In my halfway house, I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone or a computer, which meant I couldn't call anybody and couldn't apply for a job. And if I managed to go outside of the halfway house to a library to apply for a job, I didn't have a phone that they could call me and tell me to come for the interview. So if I could deconstruct prison, it would be people come out to a facility we run, that is run by formerly incarcerated people, that are halfway houses run by us. We know what we need. We know how to make it happen. And take it away, take all that profit away from people doing it, because we can take a tenth of the money and make it go that much further, because we know what we need coming home.
Many of you have touched on, and you did it today as well in your earlier discussions about mental health, of course, in your field, in prisons. And so, Rick, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the LA County Jail is like the largest mental health facility in the country. Given your experience and everybody, what do you think we can do to better improve mental health resources? What do we need to do? And do you think it can be done?
You know, we closed in the 80s we had community mental health centers that were decentralized facilities that were in people's neighborhoods, in urban settings, in rural settings. It worked. We closed them down. We had psychiatric hospitals, brutal, but they were there. There is nothing that we have that currently exists that handles mental health. And we have to go back to the model that worked very well, which was the community mental health centers, which is community-based mental health. Go to your own community, sit in a place where you know people, because, and prison has, I think it's something like greater than 40% of the people in prison have mental health issues. So they were taken off the streets for having mental health issues.
Just to kind of further say what you're saying, I think it goes to, again, just what our mindset is about mental health and about what problems are in our society and how we handle it. And I think getting a better understanding of mental health issues throughout our society and just coming up with other ways to handle those in the criminal justice system. When I worked in the field, for example, there was a case where the neighbors called the police saying there was a disturbance at a house. And the police showed up and a guy had barricaded himself in his house, and they banged on the door and hammered, and he wouldn't let him in. They busted the door, and he's sitting in there with a rifle. He was having a schizophrenic episode. They arrested him for threatening the police with a weapon, which he never would have if they hadn't busted in his house. He was just having a mental health issue. Instead of handling that within the mental health community, they prosecuted that as an aggravated offense, and he spent the next 15 years in prison. That did him no good, that didn't protect the safety of the community, and it didn't correct what the issue was to start with. In fact, I'm sure it made it worse. A lot of times people with mental health issues are victimized in incarcerative settings. So that's what I'm talking about thinking of it differently. There's definitely other avenues to handle mental health issues than within the criminal justice system. Other avenues that are a lot more important and a lot more viable.
Seems to me there's a lack of training and emphasis to those that are caring for those that are incarcerated and understanding the trauma of losing a parent while you're incarcerated. And I think that's part of the issue as well. It's more of a we against them mentality instead of, okay, let's look at this individual who's lost a mom, they're totally isolated. Is there anybody around that can at least take a few minutes or an hour? And I just don't think there's enough emphasis about the importance of understanding mental health throughout the entire system, the community mental health at the institutions.
Okay. The minute you're arrested is the minute that your mental health starts to deteriorate. So if you've never had a diagnosis for mental health issues, an overlooked area, in my opinion, is the continuum of what happens to someone from the moment they're arrested to their plea or their trial, where you lose more to being incarcerated and then to being released. There must be stages of where your mental health is changing radically in a downward cycle. And just like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of death and dying, nobody has really looked into what are the stages of the impact of the mental health from the moment of the arrest, which I think is important, that there are stages. And you lose a little bit of yourself all the way down. The question I have is, can you go back, or do you have coping skills that just allow you to survive? In other words, did they chip away enough at your basic ego so that you can't get to where you were? And even if they did, can you supplement through your just your sheer force of fierceness and force of nature, your willingness to survive, and have a whole different set of coping skills? Because I believe people who suffer, whether it's 9/11, whatever the situation is, people who have a great deal of suffering do suffer a mental health loss, which we don't examine. We don't know how to treat it because we've never identified it. But I know for sure that my mental health was deteriorating from the moment of my arrest.
And I will say this, and it even further deteriorated when you spoke to this earlier, when you were placed in solitary. So it was, those policies, other policies that can be analyzed and examined to see how solitary confinement or certain programs within the criminal justice system further exacerbate.
I've got one last question before we're going to open it up to our lovely audience members. In the context of our discussion, and y'all being all experts in your areas, what is the one thing you would want future employees of the legal, criminal, social work, and psychological fields? Because I'm sure we've got students out here that are interested in those fields. So in the context of this conversation, what's the one thing you would like them to take away that they should keep in mind for their future professional lives? And after this, we'll open it up to the audience.
You have individuals that grow up in dysfunctional households, and those things do play an effect as far as their adult life. You have individuals that does have mental health issues as they spoke on, and those things affect the individual as far as who they are as a person, the way they conduct and carry themselves. And I would say, as a professional, you read it, well, obvious once you obtain a certain degree or whatnot, it's basically saying that you're a professional or you're an expert at that field. Yet at the same time, I always be realistic about it. Be realistic about what you read or what it is that you study, because the book will say A, B, C, D, but you live real life. So you have to be able to apply what it is that you read to the reality of what you're up against.
I would say for me, empathy and compassion. That it is so easy to cast a blanket statement on all of those who have been incarcerated, that have offended, that they must be bad people, that they have done something wrong. They deserve to be punished to the highest possible degree. And if you would just treat each like we do with our students, I look at every student and I think of success for every one of my students. And I've said this time and time again in the task force, we need to look at every offender and see how we can have success for every offender like we do in education. And if we could create a framework from that perspective, maybe we could see real change occur.
In Judaism, we have a phrase called tikkun olam, which means repair the world. And that means do what you can to make whole. I believe we are one community, and we are only as good as each of our parts. If you are going along in your life for your own success, for your own children, for your own family, without opening that door to other members, and if you're not building community and taking care of somebody, then the community suffers. The more we focus on I, and the less we let in. And we need to repair this world. It's divided. And that means a commitment to help someone every day, and a commitment to being aware of what you might be thinking that may be incorrect, opening your mind, and actually making a commitment to act, to do something. Not just sit after today. This should not be your last stop on mass incarceration. This should be your first engagement.
For me, I've got to start with me. I've got to look within myself. I hope that you'll start with you. I could easily, as a licensed counselor, psychologist, give you a label. But I need to look at myself first. I need to know myself. The more I look at myself, the more I realize the mistakes I make, the good that I do, the better I understand the person I'm talking about.
I would say that we can, kind of work all together, and we can work all year long to design these great programs and to, provide education and provide job training and reentry programs. And that alone isn't going to make a difference if then no one will give a person a job or no one will rent someone an apartment. And so when I talk about community, that's what I mean, is that it takes a whole community effort. I remember about 10 years ago when I was working in the field, we got a lot of funding to set up prison boot camp programs. And it was run just like military boot camp. It was a big kind of trendy at the time. We had a lot of them set up, and they're mainly for young first-time offenders. And the idea was to re-socialize those people if their lives were maybe lacking discipline. And as it turned out, they started off and they worked really well, and people kind of thrived in that really regimented, strong discipline sort of an environment. So much so that when they got out, they would have been really great soldiers. They thrived in that environment, they liked the discipline, they liked the physicality of it. But what happened, like every status, when they got out, they were released into their own neighborhood, where when you say, sir, yes, sir, you don't get accommodation for that, you get made fun of. And when you dress in a very professional way, you don't get promoted or hired, you get made fun of in the old neighborhood. And so we try to work a deal with the U.S. military saying, these people have now been conditioned, they'd be perfect soldiers and they want to be soldiers. But of course the military won't take convicted felons. And so there was, we kind of ran into a stalemate, and what ended up happening is because their new socialization didn't work in their old environment that they were released back into, it eventually went away, and we didn't have good long-term results. And so we need a society that's open and accepting to people. If we're going to rehabilitate and teach new skills, then they have to be able to use those new skills and use that new socialization. We need a society that's accepting of that reentry and kind of makes a place for that.
Thank you all so much. Can we first give them a round of applause for sharing all this? Thank you all, each and every one of you. And now, let's open it up to you guys. Who in here has some questions they would like to ask? Just raise your hand, I'll bring you a mic. Coming your way, sir.
Hello. All right, good. Can you all confidently say that every individual is liable to rehabilitation? And if not, where do you draw the line?
It's pretty clear from, at least in my field, from scientific research, that there are stages of change. And the first stage of change is called pre-contemplative. It means I'm happy with what I am and who I am. So is that person going to change at that moment when I visit them? Now, we also know that change is fluid. So there might be a reason that the individual is pre-contemplative, embarrassment, shame. So it really is an individual situation, but again, change again is fluid. So are there some people out there that don't want to change and continue the type of lifestyle that they have? Absolutely. But I think that's a very, very small percentage.
So your question is, who should you be scared of and how many? Let's be clear. There's two things I think are very important. A, don't ever ask a person what the crime is. B, don't presume that they're all dangerous. We've been taught to believe we are not safe. There's not a print, paper, social media document that doesn't talk, that comes out of law enforcement that doesn't use the word safe and dangerous. You have been taught, well taught, because otherwise you wouldn't ask the question. I was in prison with 1,300 women, and I would let each one of the women have the keys to my apartment. Most of them did not commit crimes, or rather, I don't want to separate nonviolent from violent crimes. Even people who committed robbery or murder come out different after they've been in prison. They are not the same 17-year-old jerk they were when they're 37. So what percentage of prison is probably not able to come back into society would be maybe 5%, which means we have 2 million more people, 2.1 million people who really should be out here. And the question should be, how can I help?
We've got another question right here.
This is for Evie. So I was just wondering, since I wasn't here earlier, what is solitary confinement like, and how did it affect your mental health?
We can probably both speak to that. I'll tell you what I told an earlier audience, which is, I want you to envision being in your own bathroom. Not a dorm bathroom where there are 3 stalls, but your bathroom that you grew up with. And what you have in that bathroom is a toilet and a metal bed. There's no medicine cabinet, there's no way to see out the window, you have no cell phone, no laptop, nothing to write with. You're absolutely allowed nothing to do. The question I have for you is, could you sit in your bathroom for 24 hours? No. Most people can't. To make people sit in solitary confinement is the most inhumane, unconscionable thing we've ever done. I personally walked out of prison not able to go in an escalator. There are things I didn't even know that I was afraid of that 4 years later, I still have reactions. Even the elevator in the hotel I'm staying at is too slow, and I get panicked. The triggers are enormous, but basically solitary is some sick thing, which 80,000 people are in every day. If there's one issue that should be abolished immediately, and there's no reason for it, it should be solitary confinement, because it's not normal. None of you could sit in that room for 24 hours, because as he said, the walls start talking to you, and you have to work magic to fight against that wall.
It's not a good place. The effect it had on me, I like being to myself. I don't really like being around a lot of people, and I'm accustomed to that because I sat in that cell by myself for so long. I like things around me to be very clean. Like when you sit inside the cell, you kind of find things to do. So you're going to clean up, straighten up. So now I have it to where no matter where I'm at, in my car, in my truck, in my house, I need everything to be clean. Like if just something's out of order, it bothers me. Like, man, and I talk to myself. And I talk to myself because I was so used to doing it for so many years and that you can be someone, you just naturally just be sitting there, but you just talking with yourself. You're not thinking that there's nothing wrong, but if someone was sitting over there and they was looking at you, they'd be like, what's wrong with that? But those are just the after effects of sitting in solitary confinement like that by yourself for so many years.
If I may add, I can't be in a crowd. I can't tolerate noise, because I was with women who were screaming, get me the fuck out of here 24 hours a day. Most of us need to be alone, need to be in quiet spaces, can't handle a crowd. It's almost, you could research the consequences of solitary and identify, like if you close a door on me in any room in the United States, I want to make sure that door can open. Because you get closed into that cell, and when they turn the lights off, you're in a state of panic. Because what happens if there's a fire? You can't get out. What happens if there's a flood? You can't get out. And you have to fight all the fears that you are unimaginable. So we all come out damaged. That doesn't mean we can't accommodate and become successful. But it means that the system, instead of punishing us for cashing a bad check or committing a robbery, the system has destroyed our mental health. And I don't think people go to prison to get sexually violated, to have their mental health destroyed, to have no medical care. I don't think there's so much damage done in prison that it's a miracle any of us have come out as well as we have.
So I'm going into the mental health human services field, and I heard a lot of y'all talk about, how many people are in jail due to drug addiction. So what can we do as advocates to help different programs start to stop them from going to jail because they have a drug addiction?
You mean well, we have to start right here with our attitudes. We vote for people who determine legislation, who determine how these things are handled. So one of the most important ways to get involved is politically. Because if you you individually can't do anything, but you as a group can sit down with the congressperson and say, we don't want people who have drug addiction to go to prison. It's the power of the people. So you have an opportunity in November to decide whether it's the same old shit or it's going to be new. And you have to get involved because the decision makers are the one who controls what happens to us.
I would also, to add to that, I would say, you need to, and this is coming from the viewpoint of a sociologist, but you need to look at what social viewpoints towards addiction are. It's not the addiction. We're addicted to all kinds of things in our society that aren't illegal. We're addicted to video games, and we're addicted to cheesecake, and we're addicted to vaping, whatever. But none of those things are illegal. It's a social attitude about drugs, right? And even that is determined by what society thinks. Think of times when cocaine was illegal or was legal and now it's illegal, or alcohol was illegal and now it's legal, right? You know what I'm saying? Marijuana, now we can't decide across the state line whether it's legal or illegal. And so it's the social attitude about the drug that really makes a difference. We try to couch that in terms of being, so kind and gentle and we're treating addiction. But what it really is we're judging about the particular drug. And we need to just acknowledge that about ourselves and maybe decide that handling that within the criminal justice system isn't the place to handle it. And clearly, addictions are damaging, but not just addictions to the things that we decide are illegal, right? All kinds of addictions are damaging, and so I agree. I think it's starting that social conversation and then influencing legislation that has to do with, the mindset of how society views various substances.
If I could add one thing, I was stunned at the number of people who were in prison because of their addiction to those scratch-off cards. I mean, and they would steal so they could buy scratch-off cards. Now, it's not, they don't belong in prison, they belong in therapy. But as long as the culture views criminalization as the only path through which we fix people, then that will continue to happen. I met a lot of people who had gambling addictions that they couldn't control, and they stole from their mother or their father, or they tried to sell their wife's house. But it's something that needs help. Prison's not going to change that. That addiction is not going away once you come out of prison. It'll just get resumed. So what have you done? You've stopped someone from doing something, you haven't fixed them, and you put him or her back out, and they're going to do the same. The first scratch-off card is the first drink, is the first piece of cheesecake.
We've got time for 2 more questions, so we're going to start here. Unfortunately, we're down to 2 questions. We're going to start with this lady right here, and we're going to end it with this one, so go right ahead.
Obviously, there's a societal lag in
like things being changed. But for y'all, if you could, like, would it have to be a domino effect of like one thing is kind of fixed and then everything else kind of follows? What would y'all's advice be to be the first thing that changes? Would it be like the police over arresting? Would it be like things in prison, like programs and teachers and mentors, or would it be like after the, like, instead of like the halfway houses, would it be like a better form for that?
The first thing I would say is education and mentor. That's one of the reasons why I'm so successful, is because of my education and the mentors that I had before me. So I would say if there was anything that I could change, it would be the amount of education and the mentor.
There are enough people in this room alone to tackle 50 problems if everyone took one. So the question is not where we should change the system, but to what extent people are willing to make commitments in different areas to try. Formerly incarcerated people are networking around this country, are convening, hundreds of us are convening, and we know the problems, and we're trying to shortcut getting there. Because the way that activists have gone, there's been organizations that have been around 40 years that work on legislation that have tried to turn around the minimum sentencing, and it doesn't get done that way. So it's like we've had enough. Let us do the shortest path to the quickest way to get the best result. So getting involved with formerly incarcerated people who are activists is crucial, because they're going to cut corners and not do it as normal. But there's enough people in here to make a congressional person change their mind about how to vote. There's enough people in here to say we don't want solitary confinement anymore in the state of Texas. You are the resource. We're not the resource. We collectively are the resource. So there's not a spot, there's every spot.
I just want to ask, because I see this all the time, people that go to prison. I see this all the time with people that go to prison. They're not being rehabilitated. You know, they're in 3 months, then they go back in, out, in and out, in and out. So is it because they want to go to jail, or they want to keep committing the same crimes, or is there not enough resources out here to help, you know, ex-cons, you know, get their lives back on track, either with, you know, if it's from drugs or stealing, whatever they're doing, they're not, you know, taking opportunity, like they were in jail, you know, hey, I need to stop, you know, they go back and do the same thing over and over again until they get a back sentence, you know.
I want you to imagine that you're from Venus and that you landed on Earth. Where do you go? People who walk out of prison have been away from society. Where do they go first? Who do they talk to first? What are they doing in what order? There's no place that they're directed to that's a source that's helpful. There are resources that have hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're useless to us. If this campus had a drop-in center with a couple of people, that would be more useful than an $18 million nonprofit. We need to go to talk. We don't even know, some of us, what we need. We don't even know the questions to ask. So people recidivate because of a lack of knowledge, a lack of access, but most of all, they're hungry. They're not going back because they want to be back in prison. They're hungry. I'm telling you, in my first 16 months, I was homeless and penniless and living in a women's shelter. I was devastated with 30 years of work experience that I couldn't help myself any way, and I was resourceful. I knew where to go. So I will tell you, if I knew where to go, I can't even imagine how people who never had a 30-year work experience could navigate the system. It was too hard. You go to this side of New York for your Social Security card, you have to wait 3 hours to get your Medicaid card. You don't know how to navigate this. We're talking basic services. People go inside as a last resort, not first resort. But you need places with a big sign. Formerly incarcerated people are welcome here. And you have to mean that. And you have to be there to help them. And you have to be facile enough to, when you find out there's another need, add another service. Don't limit it to the two things you know. Expand it as you understand it.
Hey, so thank you, every single one of you, so much again for this valuable conversation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna make one pitch for witness. I would love you all to put your names on my mailing list for you to work on some of the issues that I'd like to work on. So I have to get out this card that says donate, you don't have to donate, but text and put yourself on my mailing list. And every once in a while, I'll tell you, go out and vote for this, or go out and do that. I need an army of textivists. I need your help.
That's a new word, textivist. That's a good word. All right. Make sure you fill out your evaluation forms. Those of you, particularly student